And now something completely different.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you live just outside.
I like to think balding is just God's way of saying, now let's see you get laid.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
What I'd really like to do is put the greatness of this man in perspective.
The hair loss community has a lot to be thankful for, having you as a spokesperson.
You mean you just call this guy up?
About life and about reality.
And now, America's #1 reality radio show for men. Live from Los Angeles, it's Spencer Cobrin's The Bald Truth.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for hanging out for the extra 18 minutes waiting for me to get on the air. And by the way, Joe Tillman is he's not feeling well, apparently. He's too sick to do the broadcast. So for all of the Joe fans out there, he's not going to be here. But you know what? 20 years ago, when CBS Radio was paying me to do a broadcast on Sunday nights, if I were to say, you know what, I think my voice is out, or I think that, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling good today, I can't come in, they would have been like, okay, cool, no problem. Don't come in next week because there's somebody that wants to fill your spot. That's real life, baby. That's the way it works. Joe's got to take a day off. Anyway, guys, welcome to the broadcast. I want to welcome everyone who is tuning in on iHeartRadio, iTunes Radio, Stitcher Radio, through the Guys from Queens Network, on The Bald Truth, through Joe Tillman's personal YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Joe Tillman /hair transplant mentor. Also, everyone I'm listening everyone watching on message forums like, and Joe usually does this, Belly Capelli, the Italian message forum, hair transplant experiences, and I think it's the International Hair Loss Forum. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. That is the French forum. I want to thank you guys for allowing this broadcast to essentially be put on your website so that other people who are dealing with hair loss and your readers can get the facts, can get the truth, can be a part of something that is much bigger than a message forum. That's what some of these other forums forum owners and these heavy, like, unrealistic competitors don't really understand. We are supposed to all be in this together. And that's why we do what we do. Phone number is 888-659-3727. Boy, I'm looking at Joe's page, and I think this is the lowest number I've ever seen. Probably because Joe's not here. And that's ridiculous. Guys, I've been doing this show for 21 years. So call in if you have any questions. I am here to do the broadcast live, to give you all the information that you need about anything and everything hair loss. Oh, there, some numbers are going up, and I see that our iHeartRadio and Stitcher is doing well. So, guys, call us who are listening in your cars, who want to talk about your hair loss situation. The reality is there's a lot of things going on in the industry. And I don't have it on this computer. But essentially, this week, the California State Medical Board made it official that it is illegal for technicians, those who refer to themselves as hair transplant assistants or technicians. It is illegal for them to dissect, not extract, but essentially do FUE and dissect and extract grafts on their own. Now, what are the implications of this? It's something that we're going to talk about. While there are many physicians in the field, especially in the ISHS, who think this is a big win, that this is a coup for them, the reality is, for the consumer, it is not. The consumer is going to be tremendously damaged. It's going to take at least, I'd say, 2 years before we really start to recognize the carnage. My hope was that the state medical boards would kind of give physicians 6 months to a year to make the needed changes, to retrain PAs if they were unwilling to do the surgery themselves, to perform and to have enough time on tissue to perform this surgery well. That is not what's going to happen. There's two scenarios. One is the guys that are doing it, and a lot of the really well-known guys here in the state of California, extremely well-known, out there on social media, out there, jockeying for position on places like Real Self. They're not performing or dissecting FUE grafts themselves. So, and a lot of these guys don't even know how to do it. So they're not going to be able to train a new staff. Who's going to train them? Well, if they allow their technicians to train them, that would be illegal, at least here in the state of California. If they train them, then these poor PAs aren't going to know what they're doing. There are no real courses out there, I would say, that are more than a weekend or a couple of days, that will help these PAs really have the skill set needed to help paying patients whose precious hair follicles, their finite amount of hair follicles, are dependent on these people being able to do their jobs well. It's going to be carnage like we have never seen. It's going to be a mess. Now, that is just for those who decide to comply with the law. What's interesting about this and what the state decided to do is they're only presenting these guys with, depending on how egregious it is, with a $10,000 fine or time in local jail or in prison. Now, it'll never get to the point where these guys are put into prison. Maybe they will be fined because they don't have enough people out there to really do the legwork to kind of oversee what's happening in these doctors' practices. What's a $10,000 fine to these guys? That's the cost of one surgery, if not less. Why not make the fine, I don't know, $215,000 if you really want to enforce something? It's all, in my opinion. I don't think it's a great start, as a lot of people are claiming. I think it's going to do a lot of damage the way that things we're going to see things progress in the coming months and years, especially if this sets a precedent. I'm all for surgeons performing surgery. I'm all for these guys who put their credentials out there to do the work themselves, but there's a way to go about things, and this was not the way. Phone number is 888-659-3727. Let's see who this is. Hey, you're on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Spencer.
Yes.
This is Scott Alexander.
Hey, Dr. Alexander, how are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I can't complain. Things are good. So you obviously heard my opening. What do you think?
I did. Hey, this has been a problem for years, unfortunately, and it's something that is really needed to have been done, but it's like you say, I know these guys, and I just don't know how many of them are even going to care, thinking that, hey, they're not going to get into our office and catch us. They're not going to be able to know. How do you know if a doctor's in the room or not unless a patient is complaining?
Well, and that's the reality, is that the patient actually has to complain. And, yeah, they may start off, by sending one secret shopper around once in a while, but they really do not have the manpower to make this happen. And frankly, unless the state's attorney gets involved, I mean, nothing is going to happen. It's great that it's on paper. But
you know what would be interesting is if they really got serious with this and said that, okay, if we catch you doing this, you could lose your medical license.
Well, not only exactly. I would say even forget about the medical license. Really hit them in their pocketbook right away, because they won't lose it. It'll be suspended. So let them say it's a $500,000 fine and the possibility of having your license revoked. That's it.
Right. Now, I guess the biggest problem with this has been that the consumer or the patients have not been able to know which offices are doing this. which offices is the doctor really involved, or which offices are you not going to see the doctor, or is the doctor going to be present but not really doing anything? And I'll tell you, the biggest problem I see with this is if you aren't on top of your technicians continually, they're going to take the shortcut. And if it's a difficult case, they're not going to have the stamina or desire to really see it through, so they're just going to tell the doctor, hey, I got so many grafts, or we got this many good grafts, and it's all going to be untrue.
Well, that's what happened. That's what
happened
happens right now. We have our undercover tech who said essentially what they do is, and even if the technicians are forthright and they tell the physician, listen, I know that you sold a 4,000 graft case. We've only been able to get out 2,800 safely and place them. They are told not to say anything, at least according to this undercover tech. And the patient has no clue that they paid for 4,000 grafts, but they only received, 2,800, and no one is the wiser.
Interesting thing with FUEs. I had a patient come to my office after he had an FUE a year or so ago, and he had digital pictures of the back of his head, and he sat there and counted every single hole where the FUEs were extracted from. And it's okay, I got so many holes. How come you said I got all these grafts?
Right.
And there isn't that many sites.
Yeah. Well, it's because we either A, they split the grafts, or a lot of the grafts were inviolable.
Had no growth either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he had no growth either. So, yeah.
Listen, but
problem.
This is the reality of the field. People who are out there on YouTube, who are watching this broadcast, who who are watching other influencers on YouTube talking about their hair transplants. You guys don't even understand the reality. This is the shit that's happening in the United States of America. Can you imagine what's happening in essentially third world countries, or even in Asian or European, in the Western world, what's happening?
Yeah.
It's insane, and so just eliminating the ability, or trying to eliminate the ability through the state medical boards for technicians to be involved, it's not even enough. It's not even close to being enough. It is only going to set a completely new trajectory for this field. In my view, that is going to be worse than ever. There's going to be more illegal surgery being performed. There's going to be more PAs who are going to decide to open up their own shops because it's going to be, essentially they're allowed to perform this surgery. Doctors are going to be left out completely.
Yeah,
it's going to be a mess.
Well, most of the medical techs out there aren't even college graduates; they're high school graduates.
Yeah, sure.
Can you imagine? I mean, it's just like would be in Turkey. They get trained on how to do a simple mechanical procedure, or just.
Well, but that's what's happening now. But say techs are taken out of the picture, okay, and we're talking about PAs, people with training and the ability within their scope of practice to perform all of the detailed work, including scoring the skin legally. At least here in the state of California, I know that it's legal basically across the board, and of course nurses. Nurses who are working, double, triple shifts to make, $100,000 a year, they can open up their own hair transplant practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And they can make millions.
The sad thing about this whole thing is that I believe that right now in the U.S., there's less than 10% of the guys doing hair transplants do a good job. All the rest, they're just transplanting or moving hair from one spot to the other.
I was speaking to, we just brought on, and until they're put on the website, I don't want to mention it, but we brought on someone who's offshore, been in the industry for a long time, from the Dominican Republic, does extractions themselves, really, really good at what they do. They applied, this is the first time they applied to the organization. And, we were talking about what is happening. It's funny because people are coming from California, New York, different parts of the country to go to see this doctor in the DR for repair work, when you would think it was going to be the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it is
Yeah,
so. It is.
that is crazy.
It's not even 10%. So we're talking about the numbers of applicants to the IHRS over the last 20 years. We are now at. I think I may have told you the number. Over 2,300 applicants. Now we've accepted a total of 75 or 78. 2 of whom died. A couple have retired. You know, so the numbers kind of go up and down. And we're going to be opening up the doors to more, doctors who really want to learn. But the reality is, it's not even 10%, Doc. Your industry is a black market.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And there's no one, because the guys, I've told you this a million times, the guys with the power in the industry, the doctors with the most power, are the older guys that do the worst work. And so...
Wait. I want you to repeat that for our listeners so they understand it. Say it slowly, because what you see out there, all these politicians with these ribbons down to their knees at these meetings, they can't transplant their way out of a paper bag.
No, and unfortunately, I go to these meetings and I listen to these guys talk, and it is so aggravating because I know the garbage that they're doing. And it's just really sad to think that, can you imagine how popular hair transplants would be if everybody was doing a good job out there?
Well,
everybody would want one.
Of course. And that's the whole point. That's why the IHRS was founded. That's why I did this more than 20 years ago. That's why I founded the American Hair Loss Association. But the problem is no one gives. There's a handful of guys, who are like, okay, this will be good for my practice. I'm going to change the infrastructure of my practice, work with Coburn, try to really, elevate the level of this field. And the rest of the guys look at it as, you know what, that's just marketing. And not only do I not feel like paying for that marketing, if I do pay for that marketing, that means that I have to actually do a good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of looking at it as...
Unfortunately,
Go ahead.
Even if they wanted to do a good job, they don't have the skill set to do it. They don't have the ability. I mean, it is crazy. It's like in all these surgical fields for regular medicine, most of them, they have to go through general surgery first before they are qualified to go into something more advanced. So they have a 5-year screening process to even see what their skill set is.
Of course.
To see if they're able to go into those.
If they have hands.
Not in hair transplants.
Yeah. Listen, I was talking. I was at the ISHRS Congress in Hollywood, in the hallway, with the current president of the ISHRS, Arthur Tykosinski, who is a really unique character in my view. I've met a lot of guys in this field. I'd have to say, in my view, the guy has a tremendous chip on his shoulder, and there's really no reason for that. I mean, he could do a lot of good, and he could have done a lot of good this year, but that wasn't the case. So it was all this whole thing about, surgeons only. Only surgeons could do surgery. And Sharon Keane was there, and he was there, and he's like, well, why don't you like that message? I told him, I think that's a bad message. I said, well, because, maybe 2% of the entire ISHRS are actually surgeons. Actually have a surgical residency. So what does that do? That gives board-certified plastic surgeons who have a surgical residency and a plastic surgery residency a lot of time on tissue as real surgeons who are board-certified not only by the American Board of Surgeons, but the American Board of Plastic Surgery, both ABMS specialties. That gives them a tremendous amount of leverage to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
And sadly, even though they are surgeons, they don't even know what they're doing. At least you guys know what you're doing. So that's a bad way to go about things.
So what I want your listeners to always remember and to do, go to all these different doctors' websites, and I tell you, look and see how they draw a hairline. And probably 95% of them is just a half circle on top of someone's head.
Right.
It is crazy. When have you ever seen a normal hairline that looked like a half circle on a head? And that's what they all do.
Well, I'm seeing that all the time. You see that all the time on Instagram, which is, first of all, if you are, and I'm not even turning my live Instagram right now, but if you are making a decision to have surgery based on someone's Instagram feed, you are a f***ing idiot. And that is what is happening today.
Isn't it crazy? And that they aren't that critical on their before and afters. And I look at before and afters, the distance between every graft, I mean, the density is just atrocious. And the grossness of their procedure, like big holes, big ugly grafts stuck in these holes, a big half circle on top of the head. There's no way that's going to turn out to look good. But people just have got to get a little bit more active into looking for these things. Be really aggressive when you're talking to the doctors. Ask them what density they're doing. Ask them, let me see your hairline, and see if that's really what you want on your head or not.
Well, the reality is that there are doctors out there who will provide images that are not their own, video and show video that is not their own.
Problem, yeah.
So the whole thing is really about third-party credentialing and third-party education. That's what I've been trying to tell the ISHRS for the last 2 years. It is essentially, not only has it fallen on deaf ears, my efforts to work with them and the ABHRS to change this field has essentially become a competition in their mind. And I can tell you what, Dr. Alexander, because they made it a competition, now I have to compete. And as we said earlier, we're going to win. That's just, it will be written in stone. In the next 90 days, everything will change as far as how the consumer, the mainstream media, and everybody in this field sees the different organizations. It's already in the process. Once we're able to accomplish that, and we are, I've already showed you some of that, then if enough guys want to come on board to work together in tandem as a cooperative, then we have a real opportunity to change the field. But those who don't, in my view, should be seen as the problem, not as part of the solution. And we're talking about some of the old guard, some of the guys that you were talking about, some of the so-called leaders who are unwilling to really affect change and just want to puff out their chest and make believe they're trying to do something for the field just so they can continue to earn their income and be seen as leaders in this field. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, it is really kind of hilarious when you're at these meetings and these guys walk around in their fancy suits and all these ribbons hanging off of their suits of who they are and what they're doing and all their accomplishments. When you look at it, they can't transplant anything. I mean, they're terrible. And they walk around with such arrogance, it just drives you crazy.
Well, it's only because they were the first in the door. When the organization was founded, they were the guys who said, hey, let's put this thing together, and we're going to be the leaders. And as time goes on, we get more and more ribbons, and more people. Unfortunately, young doctors look up to them and respect them. I had a young doctor in this studio, a guy from Mexico, and we were talking about the whole ribbon situation. And he said to me that he was shocked when he actually saw some of the work of those he revered in this industry. And essentially that it's all a sham. It's all a sham. So why not change course? Why not just say, hey, look, we have a well-structured organization. We have someone who works for us who's able to put together good parties, essentially. She's a party planner. She puts together a good organization. Why don't we just create what this should be, a scientific, educational organization without the pomp and circumstance, without the bureaucracy, without the boards and the executive committees, and without everyone essentially holding their boot on your necks as members, and make it truly democratic, as opposed to the bureaucracy that it is. And with a truly democratic scientific organization, people could actually learn. That's it. There's no politics involved.
I mean, that would be really great. It's something that really needs to be done.
But it can be. It can be done. I don't know why you guys even stand for it. I'd be like, you know what? All you guys who are a part of this board, you're out. We will not pay our dues if these guys are still in charge. The organization would just disintegrate.
You know what the biggest problem is, too, is for all those few people that would leave, and they could be the most outstanding ones of the industry for producing the best work, there's 200 more new guys coming in and looking at these same old guys and wanting to emulate.
But honestly, that can change. You know, I've held back over the years. I've really tried to work with the organization over the years, but it's already changing. I told you the amount of people that we're looking at right now. I mean, we will have the number that we need without the ISHRS. I would love them to be involved, but it's not going to happen. And it is my goal this year in 2020 to actually save these people who are watching this program and who are listening to the show from being butchered, because that is what is happening. That's what's happening in California. That's what's happening in the state of Arizona, as you know, as you well know.
You know what's interesting?
Yeah.
It's the same thing that's been going on since you began.
Yeah, it's worse.
I mean,
it's worse.
The same butchery is going on out there. And these poor patients are paying all this money thinking that they're going to get something great done. And after it's done, it grows in. Then they're embarrassed. They have to wear a hat. They have to hide it, and they can't go anywhere. It is just crazy. You know, the biggest problem is most of these people are so embarrassed they don't want to tell anybody. They just want to go under a rock and hide.
Well, that's what happens, and that's why these guys have been able to get away with essentially, not literally, but figurative murder for years. That's why listen, let's face it. Why do you think there are awards named after people in this industry who still can't perform a hair transplant? And I think you know who I'm talking about.
I know it.
You know, it's unbelievable. This guy walks around. He looks like he could barely stand up.
Yeah.
And he's still
trying.
Right. He's still trying to compete in this field. You just and guys, we'll take your calls in a second. This is just important inside information. 888-659-3727. You had to repair, and you posted this case on Bald Truth Talk message forums. A young woman,
just recently, huh?
A young woman, who went to a leader, like one of the leaders, like a guy who gets awards, several awards in this industry, who's just awarded something recently. And when you look at the work and and how this must have affected this poor woman's life, this young woman's life, you just want to cry. And it's criminal.
I mean, I felt really bad when she came into my office and I saw that. It's like, you have been living with this. And it was only like a year or so it wasn't that long, but thank goodness she found me, because I hope that now when her new transplants are going to grow in, it's going to look 100% normal and natural, and we'll have been able to hidden the old ones. But, yeah, it just blew me away of how bad it was. You know, the scar in the back was terrible. The transplants just, I mean, you can go look at those photos on your website.
Yeah, guys, go to baldtruthtalk.com. I forgot what it's under. It's actually probably under the IHRS section, under Scott Alexander's latest post. It is horrendous. And this is just this is just one person that took the time to go and get repaired, allow our pictures to be taken. This is happening every day in the U.S. So, guys, if you're considering surgical hair restoration, we're not just having a mundane conversation here about the politics of the industry. The politics of the industry is what drives all of this terrible work. And the politics of the industry is essentially what puts all of you guys and ladies into tremendous harm's way.
You know what the crazy thing is I still get patients coming to my office for consultations every single week that their main objective is, how much is it going to be? And if that's the price, then I'm going to the other guy. He's cheaper.
Yeah, well, that's all going to...
I can't believe
but that is going to
going on.
Dr. Alexander, that's going to change. Now you guys are going to be able to present these consumers with information that is going to be provided by the most respected health website in the world, that essentially things are going to be written in stone. They may be price comparison when they sit in your chair, but when you send them this information or provide this information to them, say, listen, read this. This is not coming from some rinky-dink organization. This is not just coming from me. This is not coming from a group of doctors that banded together to try to, sell their wares. This is coming from the Mayo Clinic. This is coming from WebMD. This is coming from real resources. That's it. We're going to change the field, and then at the very least, even if it's just one patient at a time. And I know that sounds kind of corny. It can happen, and in 12 months we can change it. I would say we can make it 25% better at least. Now, if everyone else came along, all of the politicians came along and said, you know what, let's just at least try this, because what we're doing is failing. It's an abject failure. It's failing miserably, and it's because of us that patients are being harmed. Then we would be able to turn the ship around overnight. But Dr. Alexander, we're going to get to some other calls. I want to thank you for calling in. Guys, if you are considering hair transplant surgery, Dr. Scott Alexander is part of what we do. He's been supporting the IHRS for many, many, many years. And he is a guy that I essentially entrusted a good friend of mine, a hair transplant to. And the guy had a fantastic job, and he's really happy that I did it. And the reason I did that is, even though this guy lives in L.A., is that Dr. Alexander at the time was able to perform a certain type. He needed a certain number of grafts performed in one sitting. Dr. Alexander is one of the few guys at the time who was really doing and moving a lot of hair safely at the time in Los Angeles. I mean, in the L.A. area. He's in Arizona. And this guy's incredibly happy. But, do your homework, people. And so you can check him out on...
I can't stress that enough. I just can't. Do your homework and be critical when you're looking at the before and after pictures.
Oh, and by the way, I want to say something that's important. Dr. Alexander, I want to thank you. You were the only person at FUE Europe when I was essentially being questioned for some of the statements that I made on a panel by a doctor who I have a lot of respect for, but they were very pointed questions, and there was a lot of misinformation that continues to be perpetuated throughout kind of the inside of this field and the politicians of this field about me and about FUE and how FUE was promoted and how FUE was, essentially introduced to the United States, and my thoughts on FUE, all this stuff. After I owned this guy on stage, which was a lot of fun, by the way, you were the only one who stood up and said, you know what? He's right. You guys are the ones who are allowing this field to be destroyed. And no one else had the courage to do that. And I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's something that's been needed to have been said a long time ago. But
yeah, but you're a quiet guy. You of all people, I was just like, wait a second. Cole's not saying anything? It's you?
I know.
But no,
I had enough.
I appreciate it. I could tell you were like almost red in the face with just listening to what this guy was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, listen, Dr. Alexander, thanks a lot for the call. Always a pleasure, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. See ya.